Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. The last couple of reading weeks I have not had a very successful time at picking good books. However, this week I'm going to be reading some epic fantasy books, which I have already read one before, so I know I'm going to love it. And also the other one is like the sixth book in a series, so there's a good chance that I'll love that one as well. So firstly, I have The Hero of Ages, which is the third book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. This is a really amazing series. I know a lot of people love it. I also do. I've kind of forgotten everything that happens in this, which I think is the best way to go into a reread, because I remember the first time I read it, like the twists and turns and reveals at the end kind of really blowing me away, and that's what I'm looking forward to getting again. So in this one, at the beginning of the series, we had this Lord Ruler who had been like a dictator for hundreds, thousands of years, and we had this band of people kind of coming together to try and take him down using Elemancy, which is this power where when they swallow metals they gain certain powers, and there are the Mistborn who are able to use all the different metals to get all the different powers, whereas most people can only use one. There is also like a lot of other kinds of magic in this world, but it would be spoilers to talk about them. But I think a lot of that as well is going to really come together in this third book. I'm really excited to be reading it. The only thing I'm worried about is it is like 724 pages. Like, this book doesn't look that big, but it's actually like these really thin pages, and the font's not that big either. So it's a lot to get through in a week, but also I know I like it already, so that should help. The other thing that I will be reading is In the Ruins by Kate Elliott. So this is the sixth book in the Crown of Stars series. I will be listening to this on audiobook. I've said before, even though I really love these books and the complexity to them, there's just so much to them that I actually really struggle with a plot summary for this one. But I have always struggled a little bit with Kate Elliott's writing. It's not that I don't like it, but it just feels really dense to me, and I get through these books very slowly. However, the audiobooks help me a lot. So I've got the audiobook. I think it's about 28 hours long, so it'll take a little while, but I think we should be okay to get through it. And then once I finish this, I'll only have one more book in this series to finish it off, which is very exciting. I guess if I was going to talk about this, high level, it's a bunch of different people fighting over the throne, but there is also this impending cataclysm, and we kind of have these people using dark magic trying to stop it, and also some other people trying to figure out how can we still let it happen, because there are some benefits to it, but also it would be great if everyone didn't die. There's a lot going on, really. There's also a lot of different mythological creatures in here, and just there's a lot of war, which isn't my favorite part of it, but it doesn't focus on that too much. But it can be quite brutal in parts, which is actually something I like. So a little bit of a nice balance to Brandon Sanderson, where some dark things happen, but he never gets too dark, you know? Anyway, that's going to be my week of reading, and I will let you know when I've actually read some of these.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just a...
Hello. So we have a visitor. Oh, my neighbor cat. Normally when I film in here with the door shut, he meows to be... Yeah, normally he meows to be let in. Because I'm filming with him in the room, he's meowing to be let out. I knew he would. I knew he would. Hang on. Ridiculous cat. He doesn't even live here. Anyway, I wanted to update you on my reading. So firstly, let's talk about The Hero of Ages. I have managed to get 100 pages through. To be honest, it's already Wednesday, so I am behind, but I am really enjoying it. I need more time. Honestly, I'm not working at the moment. I really still never have enough time to do everything I want to do, but I am really enjoying this. I will say, I think at the end of my last update, I was talking about how this book was a lot more brutal and dark than Brandon Sanderson. I did say that his books do have darker elements in this, but I guess the first two parts, like firstly there was a torture scene with these inquisitors that have they're like religious people in this world, and they have like steel spikes stuck through their eyes and through different parts of their bodies that like stick out on the other side. It's quite awful, and that first scene was kind of like a torture scene. Then we had this other creature that isn't human, and they're kind of existing in a state of being a bowl full of mussels, and that was quite disgusting. So like, it's probably not fair to say Brandon Sanderson doesn't go there, because he does in some books. I think I've just been reading too many of his nicey nice books lately. Anyway, I am really enjoying this. It's very hard to talk about without spoilers, but I guess this character that's currently living in a state of being a bowl of mussels, I'm really enjoying their part of the story, and I remember that there's quite a significant part of them throughout the story, so I'm gonna love that part. And the rest is just kind of like our main characters, Vin and Eland, kind of recovering from the bad stuff that happened in the last book and working out what's next. There is kind of a big, I guess you could say that it's an apocalyptic type situation going on in this world, and they need to work out, you know, if they're the heroes of this world, what should they do about it? So 100 pages in, in some ways it is just setting things up, but everything that's happening is interesting, which contrasts to In the Ruins. This, I actually need to check how far through I am. So I think about that far through, not quite halfway, and I will say, like, in a lot of ways, I don't feel like much is happening. It's kind of like at the end of the previous book, similar to this one. At the end of the previous book, something bad happened, and now the characters are kind of recovering from that, as well as still this ongoing battle for power between different factions. But I feel like in the last books in this series, there was quite a lot of magical stuff going on, and a lot of that has kind of climaxed, and now we're just back to this like fighting for power as well as trying to recover. There is, I guess, possibly some bigger things going on, but I feel like I'm 40% of the way through the book, and I still don't really know what the point of this book is. I am enjoying all the characters. Like, I like all the characters, but there are so many characters that I feel like primarily there are specific ones that I'm particularly interested in. Most of them do impact each other, but the characters whose storylines I'm the most interested in aren't really progressing because we're spending a bunch of time with all these other characters who are doing interesting things to some degree, but also like we're still recovering from that drama and just like figuring out where everybody's at now that that's happened. So I'm kind of worried that this book is going to be a bit of a bridge book and maybe not much will happen, and then it'll all be up to the 7th book to wrap everything up. But, you know, I still got another half to go, so we will see. And I guess that's my reading update.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just us two. That corner coffee shop we like to go. Late night walks with you to take me home. With you I never feel alone.
Hello, so I am now about a third of the way through this. I'm still kind of behind in terms of reading it this week, but I've accepted that that's fine because I don't want to rush it, because I am really enjoying just taking my time with this. And as more of the plot threads are getting introduced, I am remembering them. And I have also remembered, I think, something about what happens at the end. And so now I can kind of see some of the like clues or like little things that are being dropped along the way, which I think is definitely the joy of a Brandon Sanderson reread. And also, I think actually my favorite storyline in this one is about this boy who has the power of tin. So tin is the metal that gives people like expanded senses, so they can see really well, they can hear really well. Physical touch is really exaggerated, and like in the other books that isn't explored too much. It is used, but while some of the other powers are really taken to their extremes, it's really only in this one that one of the characters starts taking those abilities to their extremes, and I really enjoy that. And also I kind of remember that's the most tragic part of the story, so I'm expecting to be emotionally destroyed by that. There is also a plotline in here about a character who's really struggling with their religious beliefs, and I remember the first time that I read Mistborn finding that part really interesting and those thoughts the character was having really interesting. This time I feel a lot less interested in it, and I don't know why that is. Is it because I've just read it before, or is it because as a person I've become less and less interested in religion? I don't know. Anyway, there's lots of stuff going on in this. So what I do find interesting in this, there is still quite a few different perspectives, but it's all still feels very cohesive. This one, now admittedly there are a lot more perspectives, but it just doesn't feel cohesive. And I think the problem I'm having with this is that after the last book, it just feels very anticlimactic. So in the last book, a lot of the magical things that were going on kind of climaxed, and there was a lot of drama, a lot of mythological creatures involved, kind of a big battle. Like there was a lot going on in the last book. And in this book, as I said, it's kind of just the consequences of all those big things. But I don't feel like the series has a clear direction anymore. I'm hoping that we're setting things up for the last book, but I'm not really sure. It just seems like this one is focusing on, like, there is like a religious question that's been seeded throughout the book series. So again, religion is playing a part. There's also still just people fighting over the throne and like who's going to be in power. And I do feel like it seems like Kate Elliott is just struggling a little bit with getting the balance of all the different characters right. So I've actually only got about an hour of this audiobook left, and to be honest, I can't really see it doing much in that last hour. I could be wrong. I'm really hoping it'll like do something very exciting in the end that makes me excited for the last book, but I guess we'll see. Other than that, it is kind of awful today and really cold, so I'm going to probably snuggle up under a blanket and see if we can make some good progress on this. Hello, so I've made it to about 2/3 of the way through A Hero of Ages. I think I'm speeding up a little bit, but that's more about me having more time for reading because the weather's been shit rather than because the book's getting better or worse, I think. I am still finding it very satisfying, like picking up on things that I know I definitely didn't pick up on the first read, even though now I'm thinking, is that just because I wasn't aware of what Sanderson was doing? Is that just because I don't pay enough attention to the details? Because I feel like you could pick up on some of these things. Like it's always so seeded. When Brandon Sanderson does twists at the end or reveals at the end, like the thing that's so mind-blowing about it is you realize that he was telling you the whole time. But I guess there must be people who read Sanderson and are like, oh, I already see where this is going. But anyway, I guess I'm not that smart. So this time I am enjoying picking up on a lot of those things, even though I don't remember everything. But as I'm reading it, I am remembering more and more as we go. As well, one thing I will note, so at the beginning of every chapter in all the Mistborn books, there's normally like a little bit, maybe I can show you, probably not because my focus is fixed. But anyway, there's like a little italic bit at the start of every chapter, and in the first book and the second book it's kind of like a historical figure telling like a historical story that then links in to the actual story of the book, whereas this one it's more a character from the book explaining how all the magic works, and it is kind of dropping the information as you learn about it in a more exciting way in the chapters, and then just kind of like filling out the detail. I think though, because I recently read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, the Secret Project book, and one thing that really frustrated me in that is that there are a couple of chapters near the end where he basically takes a step out and just like explains all the magic because it wasn't properly explained in the story. And so now reading this one, I kind of feel like those italics, they're not really adding to the story in the way those italics did in the first two books. They're more just explaining the story because you couldn't possibly understand what's going on with the magic if it wasn't for that. And so I do think I'm enjoying those parts a little bit less, but it's possible it'll come together in a twist in the end. I can't really remember. But anyway, I guess the summary is that I am still enjoying my Mistborn reread. The other thing, I did finish off the last hour of the audiobook of In the Ruins, and I'm a bit sad because this is my favorite cover of the series, but it's not my favorite book. Like, it just didn't really do much. Just like the ending didn't save it. This book is very anticlimactic compared to the book previous in the series, and I'm not really convinced yet that the things it's setting up for the final book are going to be at the same level as the big things that happened in the fifth book. So I kind of wish she'd somehow structured it differently so everything could have come together at once, although I also see how she was wanting to look at the consequences of a big thing like what happened in the last book. So I don't know. I'm going to read the next book. I'm probably not going to wait because the audiobooks for these are only just being released, even though these books were released originally ages ago. The audiobooks are just being put out. They're really long audiobooks. And I think the seventh book's audiobook isn't due to come out until next year, but I'm not going to wait because I'm trying to get to series 0 and I'd love to finish this series. And also, like, I don't want to wait and forget everything. So what I'm going to do, I think, is read the final book in the series physically next month, I think. Hopefully it'll be better than this one. It wasn't terrible. Like, I still think it was okay. The plot wasn't as exciting as it could have been. So then, since I finished that audiobook, I have also continued on with Out of Oz by Gregory Maguire, which is the last book in the Wicked quartet that I started reading, I don't know, last month, a couple of months ago. I don't work anymore, so I don't really keep track of time anymore. Anyway, I've gotten back to Out of Oz. So, to be honest, I thought that I had read this whole series and loved this whole series back when I was like 20, but actually these 2 later books in the quartet weren't released until much later. So that's definitely not true. And like reading them, I don't remember them. And I thought Out of Oz might be better than the 3rd book. The 3rd book wasn't great. I thought Out of Oz might be better because it had a higher average rating on Goodreads. But the beginning wasn't, and then since I've picked it up, it also hasn't really got going. We've been following this young girl who is in some way related to Elphaba, just following her along on a bit of a journey, but nothing that's really happening is that interesting to me. And then, so right at the beginning of the book, we did get hints that Dorothy would be coming back to Oz, and there have been parts of the book that definitely reference the 2nd and maybe the 3rd books in the Oz series, and the 3rd Oz book is my most favorite one, probably. So like there's elements in there that I am interested in, but it's just not really getting to them. And it's weird for me to think that like all the stuff that's happened in these Gregory Maguire Oz books are between the 1st and the 2nd book, because there's still, as I said, so much Oz stuff that he isn't even getting to that like would have been so great to be adapted into a fully fledged fantasy story. So that's frustrating. But there were mentions of Ginger the General, who in the 2nd book kind of comes and takes over Oz, and there's also been talk about Mombi. Mombi's my favorite because that's in the, well, she's kind of in the 2nd book, but in the 3rd book, which is more kind of what the movie Return to Oz was. Oh no, I was rambling too much and my camera battery ran out. Basically, Return to Oz is kind of based on the 3rd book, and that's my favorite because I love Return to Oz. And there are some elements that kind of seem like they're heading in that direction. And finally, about halfway through the book, we got back to Dorothy, and I thought, finally we're going to get into the story that I actually really like. But no, we kind of had a little bit of Dorothy, and then the young girl that we're following went in a different direction, and we followed the young girl, and who knows what Dorothy's up to. So yeah, that was a shame. And I don't actually know how much more I've got to listen to. I think not much. So I've got about 5 hours of actual listening time left, but I am listening to it on 2 times speed. So I don't know, it's a 28-hour audiobook. I think I've still got about 8 hours left, which means I'm about 75% of the way through, if my maths is right. Anyway, I'm just listening to that for completion's sake, not because I'm necessarily enjoying it. But I did listen to a lot of it yesterday when I cleaned a wall, and now I only have a tiny bit of fence left to clean, and then a couple of other spots that I know I've missed, and then maybe I'll have actually finished all my deck cleaning. It's been forever, so that would be exciting. So maybe I'll try and get to that tomorrow. I can finish that book off, finish this book off. I've already finished this book off. Hey, we're finishing things. Hello, so it is time to wrap up the vlog because I have finished a bunch of things, both these books, also Out of Oz, and also what I'm very excited about is I finally finished cleaning my deck and my fence and all the wooden walls and stuff. I've done it. Now, if I wanted to get picky, there's still a few things around the place that maybe I should clean, but it's pretty good. And we're still going to spray some things to try and stop it from getting so dirty again, but I've been working on this for months, so it's so nice to look outside and just see how clean it is. I actually wanted to film out there, but another thing that I'm happy about is that the sun is out. We're kind of getting what I think is fake summer at the moment because it's almost spring, and so the winter weather kind of feels like it's calming down and we're getting a bunch of sun. Now I know spring will kick in and we'll probably get a bunch more rain and it won't be like proper summery weather, but like this winter has been so cold and so rainy, and even like last summer we had so much rain that it just feels like it's been raining forever. So I'll be very glad to get some summery weather again. As long as it's like not too summery, because it wasn't that long ago that we had a drought, and I know there's like all those fires and stuff happening in the Northern Hemisphere, which no doubt Australia will be on fire again this year because it's climate change, the apocalypse. So that's not ideal, but regardless, I'm still happy that it's going to be summer again. And I'm happy that I've cleaned my deck, I've cleaned my fences, and I'm happy that I finished these books. So let's talk about The Hero of Ages. I had forgotten how this comes together, and I have to say how it comes together in the end is very satisfying. It does some things with the magic that I really like, kind of ties everything together in a way that you might not expect, but at the same time, like, it's all there, but he just like puts it all together and you're like, oh, I see. And that is what Sanderson's great at. The other thing I noticed though, right at the end, there's kind of a couple of open questions. And I know that some of those questions are being answered in the Stormlight archives. And I'm also thinking that some of them are likely being answered in Mistborn Era 2. I haven't read Mistborn Era 2 yet. I wanted to reread this first era before I got to that. So next month I'm going to reread Warbreaker, and then from there I'm going to alternate, I think, in publication order between Mistborn Era 2 and the Stormlight Archive books. I've read all of Stormlight Archive except for the latest book, The Rhythm of War. It's been hard to avoid spoilers for Rhythm of War. And I also think, like, I kind of wrote out my plan recently, and I kind of think I'm not going to get to the 5th Stormlight book until a little bit after it's released, and I'm a little bit worried about spoilers for that, because I think Stormlight Archive is going to be 10 books, but the first 5 books are meant to kind of wrap up that story arc, and so I think it's probably going to be mind-blowing and everyone's going to want to talk about it. So how am I going to avoid spoilers? I don't know. But at least I am getting to it, I guess. Anyway, if you haven't read Mistborn in a while, I think a reread is something you'd enjoy. If you haven't read Mistborn, I still think it's definitely worth it. Not only does it have a really amazing magic system and some really cool world building, it also has like quite a lot of philosophical ideas, and like the ending I think is something you could sit with for quite a while. And of course, it's got rereadability on its side. The other thing I did finish is Out of Oz. It probably won't be a surprise to you to hear that I didn't really like it. I just think, like, if you like Wicked for the writing style and the ideas, then maybe you'll like the rest of the books. But if you like it just for like the characters and the fantastical world building, like, I think if you like it for the characters, you'll probably still want to read Son of a Witch, but the other two don't really have enough of character development in it. And then if you're liking the fantasy world building from the first book, like, it's not really there in the next few books. And that was the bit I liked the most about Wicked, is just that he took Oz and turned it into a real fantasy world. And also because I'd read all the Oz books recently, like, I know how much there is there to build on. And he did do a little bit in Out of Oz, like we did get Ozma eventually, but like such a tiny bit. So it just wasn't everything that I would have wanted, and I kind of think that most people probably won't like it. So that is a shame. I did of course also finish In the Ruins this week and didn't really love it either, but for this one I am still hopeful for the last book in the series, so fingers crossed for that, I guess. Otherwise, I guess that's me for this vlog. Let me know if you've been reading anything exciting or if you've got any thoughts about the books that I read in this vlog. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.